Pack your things. You're no longer needed. Phoebe's words hit like a knife. She stood over my desk. Her bracelet glittered in the light as she waved her hand indifferently at my things. Everyone in the office turned around. 20 pairs of eyes watched my humiliation. But the system launches next week. I whispered, barely hearing my voice. We don't need the system anymore. The deal is complete. I have complete control and a budget of $50 million. Your work is no longer required, she replied loudly so that everyone could hear. My hands hovered over the keyboard. It seemed like they didn't belong to me anymore. Just half an hour ago, a message arrived in the mail. Our company was acquired and Phoebe became the chief integration officer. That's why she was smiling so smugly. You have 20 minutes, then security will take you out, she said, looking at her watch. I mechanically packed my things into a cardboard box. Thoughts flashed through my head. The apartment rent is in a week. The savings will last for 3 months, but for at most if I eat only noodles. The job market is tough now. I spent 3 years building the integration system, thanks to which our company was bought. But Phoebe didn't put my name anywhere. I didn't exist on any official documents. I walked out with my head held high, although my legs were shaking. Security guard Tom, who always greeted me in the morning, didn't even look me in the eye when he took my pass. He just muttered quietly, "This is wrong." It was raining outside, soaking my thin blouse while I waited for the taxi. My coat was left on the chair, but I wasn't going to go back for it. The driver looked at me in the mirror. Bad day. I met his gaze, noticing the streaks of mascara on my cheeks. The worst, I replied. Or maybe not. Maybe this is just the beginning. Back then, I didn't know how prophetic these words would be. If you've ever been betrayed by people you trusted, like this. If you've dreamed of a place, subscribe because what follows is a story you'll want to hear to the end. My name is Ivy Carter. 2 hours ago, I was the chief architect of an integration system that turned client data into ready-made solutions. Not the most colorful description, but it was this system that made the CEO rich and brought my boss a budget of $50 million. I'm 32. I'm single. And until today, I thought I was successful. I sacrificed everything for work, relationships, sleep, even the art classes I loved so much. My apartment became a place where I only slept between coding marathons. The only thing in the fridge was coffee creamer and old Chinese food. Growing up with a single mom who worked 3 jobs, I learned one thing. Security is being irreplaceable. And that's what I became, or thought. Became. At home, I threw a box with sad plants and mugs on the floor. A photo from last year's company holiday fell out. In it, I'm standing in the corner, and Phoebe is posing in the center with the management. Phoebe Blake, my boss for 3 years. The woman who once said, "We will succeed together." I believed her. We started on the same day. I was a developer, and she was a project manager. I wrote systems, she showed them to clients. I sat up all night fixing bugs, and she went to parties after work. When she was promoted to director, she took me on as her technical lead. "We are a team," she said. "Your brain, my face." And I believed it. I wanted to believe it. It was easier for me to work with code than with people. I hated speaking in front of my boss. My palms were sweaty, my words got tangled. Phoebe seemed to truly appreciate my work, even if she only understood it after long explanations. 3 months ago, I noticed changes. She started asking more questions, writing down every little detail, asking for access to repositories that hadn't interested her before. I thought she finally wanted to understand technology. I was pleased. I took out my personal laptop. Luckily, it was at my work one, turned it on the kitchen table, and poured a glass of wine. The wine was expensive for me, but very necessary. The integration system, it was my idea. When the company started having difficulties, I proposed a solution to connect different data sources in real time. No competitor could do this. Management was hesitant until Phoebe said, "Ivy can handle it. I'll make sure." For a year and a half, I hardly slept. I built, tested, redesigned, improved. When the first results were encouraging, Phoebe began showing the system to investors. Everything was laid out step by step. I cook. She comes out and surprises everyone with the interface I came up with. "It's just business," she explained. "People respond better to me." And she was right. Phoebe had a talent for making an impression and at the same time winning people over herself. She knew how to read an audience. She had sales experience behind her, and I preferred silence and a cat. The more attention the system received, the more fame Phoebe got. Magazines wrote about her as an innovator of the future. At conferences, she was invited to give reports on revolutionary approaches. I convinced myself, it doesn't matter, we're a team, and the team shares the credit. How naive I was. I opened my email and saw the email that had arrived a few minutes before I was fired. Great news. The deal is closed. Thank you all for your work, especially for the leadership of Phoebe, whose visionary idea attracted the buyer. My name was not there. The phone vibrated. A message from Leah, a junior developer. What happened? Are you okay? I stared at the screen, not knowing what to say. 6 months ago, I myself was training him, showing him the architecture, explaining solutions to complex problems. Everything is fine, this is business, I wrote. A second later, a new one came message. Phoebe called an urgent meeting. She says there are problems with the system. The documentation says only she knows how to fix it. My fingers hovered over the screen. Documentation. I described everything so carefully, every function, every variable, every possible error. It was in my nature. The documentation was stored in a secure repository, which only I had full access to. At least, so I thought. 2 weeks ago, the system did a routine security update, and everyone had to reset their passwords. Could Phoebe have gained access then? I quickly logged into the repository. Everything looked normal, except for one thing. In the download history, there was an export of the entire documentation library. It happened Friday night, the corporate evening that I missed to finish the last module. A chill came over me. She planned it all, waited until the system was ready, until the documentation was completed and the deal with the buyer was secured. And then she just stole everything and threw me out. I was replaceable, useless. I slammed the laptop shut and pressed palms to eyes. Think, Ivy, think. And then I remembered one document. Not my work contract, it was a standard one and gave the company all rights to my developments. No, there was a different one. The document I insisted on when I first joined the company. I opened the file cabinet and started sorting through the documents until I found it. Just 2 pages, signed by the former CEO, a lawyer, and me. The company was small then, and they easily agreed to my cautious request. I reread point 6, paragraph 4, and my heart beat faster. It said, all integration systems developed by the employee remain his intellectual property until the official transfer. The transfer shall include a 2-month transition period and 2 entitlement compensations, determined by an independent appraisal. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. For the first time since Phoebe's words, I felt something else. Hope. I picked up my phone and found a contact I hadn't called in years. Diego Reese. We met at a programming course, but he didn't go into the field and became an intellectual property lawyer. I hesitated, my finger hovering over his name. Maybe I was exaggerating? Maybe the document was no longer valid? The screen flickered. A new message from Leah. Phoebe was panicking. Something was wrong with the authentication protocols. The demo for the new company was falling through. I pressed the number. Hello. A sleepy voice answered. Diego, this is Ivy Carter. I urgently need your help with a contract. There was a pause. Then I heard the rustling of sheets. Ivy, it's almost midnight. I know. I'm sorry, but this can't wait until the morning. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important, I said, hearing how desperate it sounded. Wait. I heard a rustling sound, then the click of a lamp. What contract is this? Diego asked. An addendum on intellectual property rights that I signed when I joined the company. I was just fired without warning, even though it was my system that the investor bought. Send a copy. His voice became harsh. Sleep disappeared. And Ivy, don't contact your former bosses until we talk. I photographed the pages and sent them to him. Then I walked around the apartment, waiting for a call. About 20 minutes later, the phone rang. This is amazing, Diego said without hesitation. They gave you some payments, a transition period, compensation for the right. Nothing, just 20 minutes to pack your things. He whistled and laughed. Then they broke that contract. And by the way, it's surprisingly well written for a document you wrote yourself. I didn't trust them even back then, I admitted. The CEO kept changing the terms. Smart of you, especially that point. Any major updates or data transfers require your personal authentication keys. They literally can't implement the system without you. I froze. What did you say? Point 8. Core protocols require confirmation from the creator through special channels. Was it you? Ivy, you built in the kill switch. I haven't thought about it for a long time. When I designed the architecture, I made several layers of protection. The deepest one required my approval for major changes. It was insurance against accidental corruption of the database. I almost removed it before launch, but decided to leave it. And what does that mean? I asked. It means they need you more than you need them. The question is, what do you want? What did I want? Revenge sounded too simple. I wanted recognition. I wanted justice. I wanted Phoebe to experience the same thing I did when I stood humiliated in the office. I need to think, I said. Not for a long time, Paul. According to you, they will soon realize what a mistake they made. We hung up. I opened my laptop again and checked my email. 3 emails from Phoebe in the last hour. 8:47 p.m. Need access to authentication protocols urgently. 9:16 p.m. Call me immediately. Critical system error. 9:58 p.m. Ivy, this is unprofessional. The board of directors is asking questions. I was about to hit delete when another email arrived. Not from Phoebe, but from CEO Anthony. Ivy, there's been a misunderstanding. Call me personally. We need to discuss your place in the company. Urgent. I slammed my laptop shut without answering. For 3 years, I dropped everything for urgent tasks, sacrificed weekends, and sleep for their problems. Let them wait today. I took a hot shower. Steam filled the bathroom, and with it came clarity. I have leverage. I have time. And most importantly, I have nothing left to lose. The phone vibrated again. When I was drying myself with a towel, a message from Leah. Where are you? Phoebe told everyone you sabotaged the system before leaving. The council members are sitting here past midnight. So this is her move. Accuse me of not understanding the system she supposedly created. Classic Phoebe. Always find someone to blame. I replied, interesting theory. What's the matter, Leah? The migration failed. Authentication errors. Representatives of the new company are nervous. I smiled for the first time since I was fired. This is not sabotage. It is a well-thought-out defense. Leah added, they say they want to call you tomorrow. Phoebe is about to explode. I didn't answer. I made myself some tea and stood by the window, looking at the city lights. The phone vibrated with new messages, but I didn't read them. For the first time, I didn't rush to solve someone else's problem. The morning brought unexpected clarity. I slept better than I have in months. There are 17 missed calls and 32 messages on the phone. I called Diego first. They've already contacted me, he said right away. Their lawyers found my number. And what did you tell them? That I now represent your interests and all matters through me? He paused. Ivy, they're desperate. The new company is threatening to cancel the deal if the system isn't up and running within 48 hours. 48 hours, I repeated. This is our window of opportunity. We need to meet. An hour later, I was sitting in his small but neat office downtown. My contract was on the table. The key parts were highlighted with a marker. They claimed that the additional agreement is invalid because it wasn't included in the paperwork when you were promoted, Diego explained. Nonsense. My role hasn't changed. I agree. They're grasping at straws. Now, let's talk about strategy. What do you want? I've been thinking about this all morning. 3 things, I said. Full recognition of my contribution. Fair compensation for the system. And I hesitated. And he prompted, I want everyone to know the truth about Phoebe. Diego leaned back in chair and looked at me carefully. The first 2 points are simple. The third is more difficult. We can't prescribe disclosure as a legal requirement, but we can create a situation where the truth will come out on its own. Exactly, I confirmed. A slow smile appeared on Diego's face. Are you thinking like a lawyer now? Let's draft a response. We spent 2 hours writing a neat letter. Not a list of demands, but an invitation to resolve the problem so that all parties would benefit. While we were working, the company called 4 more times. Ready? Asked Diego. His finger hovered over the send button. I nodded. With this gesture, everything set in motion. The response came in 15 minutes. A request for an urgent meeting between the board of directors and representatives of the new company. They even offered to send a car for me. They'll get along too well, Diego muttered. Panic. Great, I said. Let them wait until tomorrow. You're playing hardball. Diego raised an eyebrow. Like it. We scheduled a meeting for 10 a.m. the next day. Another night of uncertainty for the company. Another night when Phoebe will be floundering, trying to fix something that she doesn't understand. Leah called in the evening. This time he didn't write. They brought in outside consultants. 3 different teams. No one can pass authentication. How is Phoebe holding up? I asked calmly. Leah lowered her voice. She told the board that she was the one who came up with the system architecture, and you were just implementing her ideas. Supposedly, she taught you everything. I squeezed the phone tighter. They believed them. At first, yes. But then the consultants started asking technical questions, and everything became awkward. I closed my eyes, imagining the picture. Phoebe is confused. Not knowing how the system works, her confidence wanes with each question. Is there one more thing? Leo continued. The representative of the new company asked to see the documentation with your signatures. Phoebe said that you never properly documented anything. I laughed bitterly. She said this. Yes. Then Anthony looked very worried. He asked about the repository. Phoebe said that you deleted everything before leaving. That very repository where 3 years of my work were stored, all the decisions, discoveries, sleepless nights. The repository that she herself downloaded before firing me. Leah, will you do something for me? I said cautiously. Check the documentation access logs for the last 2 weeks. I need to know who came in. I already checked, he replied, surprising me. Actually, that's why I'm calling. Phoebe downloaded everything last Friday. I have the logs. My heart started beating faster. Can you forward them to me? I already did. Check your personal email. He paused and added, Ivy, what she did to you is wrong. Most of the team understands this. After the call, I forwarded the logs to Diego with a short note. Another weapon. That night, I did something I hadn't done in years. I took out an old sketchbook and paints, sat down by the window overlooking the city lights, and started drawing. The hours flew by. I dissolved into colors and lines, creating my own, not fixing someone else's. By morning, I felt a calm I hadn't known for a long time. I chose my outfit carefully. Not a formal office suit, but a green dress. It made me look confident, professional, but myself. Diego met me in the lobby of my former office. Remember, he said quietly as we waited for the elevator. I do most of the talking, and when you speak, you only talk about technical details. No emotions. I nodded, although it was the emotions that were the hardest to contain. The elevator was going up, and I was repeating to myself what I would say and what I would not say. When we entered the meeting room, everyone fell silent. There were 8 people sitting at the table. Anthony, our director, 3 of the board, 2 representatives of the parent company, a woman in a formal suit who is clearly a lawyer, and Phoebe. Her face changed from surprise to anger to fear, as she put on a calm smile. Ivy, thank you for coming. We have questions about the system. Ms. Carter will explain the technical details. First, let's clarify her involvement. Diego interrupted softly. He laid out copies of my additional agreement and printouts of access logs on the table. Everyone reached for the papers. I met Phoebe's eyes and saw the moment she realized her version was crumbling. The room became tense. Anthony cleared his throat, looked from the contract to the frozen Phoebe. Before we begin, Diego said, we need to get the facts down. The integration system was developed by Ms. Carter. According to this document, it retains the right to intellectual property until certain conditions are met. The lawyer leaned forward, but this agreement was signed 3 years ago with different management. We believe the company has benefited from the results all these years, Diego interrupted. It is no longer possible to say that a document is invalid just because it is inconvenient. The woman with gray hair tapped the curtain with her finger. Can anyone explain what is shown here? Phoebe spoke quickly. These are regular backups. As a project manager, I regularly save documentation. I couldn't stand it. At 11:42 p.m. on Friday, as I was finishing my last module, the room fell silent again. The silver-haired woman turned to Phoebe. Yesterday you said that Ms. Carter did not keep records. Phoebe hesitated. There were gaps, I tried to fill them. Anthony's face darkened. But at the emergency meeting, you claimed that Ivy deleted everything before leaving. Perhaps I misspoke under pressure, Phoebe blurted out. Her smile faltered. The main thing is that the system works. That's right, said the silver-haired woman and turned to me. Ms. Carter, can you troubleshoot the authentication issues? Everyone looked at me. It was time to tell the truth about everything, but Diego quietly touched my hand, reminding me of our strategy. I took a deep breath. Yes, I can. The authentication protocol requires my biometrics for any major changes. This is protection against unauthorized interference. The company's lawyer hesitated. It was unusual. Everything is described in Section 27 of the Architectural Review, I said calmly. Phoebe approved it last year. Phoebe's face turned red. I don't remember that. Page 42, paragraph 3. Your initials are there, I continued. The gray-haired woman leaned back slightly. Something like respect flashed in her eyes. How quickly can you make the correction, Ms. Carter? Diego intervened. It depends on the conditions of her return. As her lawyer, I insist that she be recognized for her intellectual property rights, receive proper compensation, and receive official attribution. Phoebe took over the authorship. Ivy was part of my team. Teams do not receive separate credit. Interesting, Diego replied, placing a selection of press articles on the table. Here you talk about your revolutionary system. No commands are mentioned. Anthony sighed and ran his hand through his hair. Let's focus on solutions. Miss Carter, what do I need for you to come back right away? Diego and I exchanged glances. Everything went according to plan. 3 conditions, I said firmly. First, fair compensation for my system. Diego had done the evaluation. Anthony nodded. Second, public recognition of me as the author and architect of the integration system in all company materials. Phoebe wanted to object, but Anthony stopped her with a look. In the current circumstances, it is reasonable. And third, I'll look directly at Phoebe. I will personally oversee the implementation as the technical director. There was an uproar in the room. Phoebe jumped up. This is absurd. I am the director of integration. The system is under my responsibility. A system that you cannot manage, the CDO woman said quietly. A system that you barely understand. Anthony sighed heavily. Phoebe, sit down. We need to discuss this calmly. There is nothing to discuss here, Phoebe answered sharply. She is holding the company hostage. Diego smiled coldly. Ms. Carter is not holding anyone hostage. She is simply protecting her rights under the contract after being wrongfully dismissed. The CDO woman turned to Antone. We do not have time for long negotiations. If Ms. Carter makes the system work, her terms are reasonable. Anthony nodded slowly. Agreed. Ivy, if we accept your terms, how soon will you start? Immediately, I replied. I'll solve the authentication issues in a few hours. Full implementation will take about 2 weeks. 2 weeks, Phoebe laughed. I promised the board 3 days. You promised something you couldn't keep, I said calmly. The second representative of the parent company, who had been silent until then, leaned forward. Ms. Blake, yesterday you assured us that you knew the system. And you did, and now it turns out that without Ms. Carter's help, you can't even log into it. Explain. Phoebe was visibly confused. I oversaw the entire project. I delegated the technical details to the team. But you presented yourself as the architect of the system, he insisted. I spoke as a manager. Ivy worked under my supervision. Her voice rose. The CDI woman said coldly, Control is not creation. Anthony cleared his throat. We need to make a decision quickly. I suggest we agree to Ms. Carter's terms and finalize the details by the end of the day. Diego pulled out the preliminary agreement. We foresaw this outcome. All the key points are here. While the documents were being passed around the table, Phoebe tried her last argument. This sets a dangerous example. What prevents other employees from holding the system hostage? Perhaps, the woman replied, speaking sediently. But how much more dangerous is the example of appropriating other people's ideas? Half an hour later, the meeting concluded with a signed agreement. When everyone left, Phoebe lingered. We were left alone. You're not going to make it, she said quietly. You're not a leader, Ivy. You're just a programmer. You don't have the strength to handle politics at this level. I calmly collected the papers. You taught me more about politics than you think. This isn't the end, Phoebe hissed. On the contrary, it is the end, I replied. You fired me in front of everyone. Call me worthless. I thought there would be no consequences for that. She opened her mouth, but I was already leaving. The next 2 weeks were among the most difficult of my career. I worked directly with the parent company team, solving integration problems. I fixed the promised authentication errors in a few hours, but the complete setup of the system required a lot of effort and attention. Phoebe tried to interfere, organized unnecessary meetings, argued with me in front of others. But I responded with such detailed, technical explanations that her eyes literally glazed over. By the end of the first week, representatives of the parent company began contacting me directly. By the middle of the second, Phoebe's meetings began to be canceled. The board scheduled a general meeting for Friday to formally announce the new structure. On the day when I was preparing for the meeting, a group of people came to my temporary office. Leah dropped by. You did it. Everyone says you saved the deal. The system just needed the right approach. I answered calmly. It's more than just an approach, Leah insisted. Phoebe had been saying for months that she created the architecture, and now everyone knows the truth. I smiled. How is she taking it? Leo grinned at Shira. Too bad. Yesterday at the meeting, she tried to take credit for the implementation. Anthony stopped her right away. He said that honest recognition of authorship is the foundation of the company's reputation. I couldn't help but smile. Honesty, imagine. The company atrium was full of people. When I arrived for the announcement, Anthony was standing at the podium. Behind him sat the board members and executives of the parent company. Phoebe sat at the end of the row. Her face was stony. As you know, Anthony began. Our company has undergone major changes in the last 2 weeks. The integration of our technologies with the new parent company opens up enormous prospects. He spoke in the usual corporate phrases until he reached the HR news. I'm pleased to introduce our new leadership team who will lead us forward, he said. People came forward one by one, their new positions announced. The audience clapped politely. When Phoebe's name was called, I held my breath. Phoebe Blake is moving to the customer success team. Her communication skills will help strengthen our partnerships with customers, Anthony said. Not a firing, but a demotion and a removal. Phoebe's forced smile showed that this was a surprise for her. And finally, Anthony continued, I'm pleased to announce our new CTO. He is the architect of the integration system that allowed us to reach this moment. Ivy Carter. The applause was deafening. There were even cheers from the development team. I saw smiles, nods, thumbs up from those who had watched my humiliation just a couple weeks ago. I went to the podium and said a few short words, more about the future of technology than the past. But in the end, I couldn't resist. Success in technology is not about who speaks the loudest or better sells the idea. It's about innovation, integrity, and tenacity to create a system that works exactly as promised. I want to lead a team where everyone is valued for their true contribution. The crowd clapped again. I watched as Phoebe quietly left through the side door. That evening, I was packing up my new office, the same corner office that used to be hers. Diego called. Everything is ready. Your new compensation is 6 times your previous salary, plus stock options, an implementation bonus, and official recognition. The press release is out. Your name as the systems architect is everywhere. Tech magazines are already wanting interviews. I leaned back in my chair, and looked out at the city lights. Thank you for everything, Diego. No, he replied. You did the main thing. You created value that couldn't be ignored. After hanging up, I took out my old ID card, the one that security guard Tom had awkwardly taken 2 weeks ago. I found it in a drawer with a small note. Thought you'd want return it. In the photo, I was younger and with my hair tightly pulled back. She had a serious expression. I almost didn't recognize this woman. My phone vibrated with a message from an unknown number. This office suits you. I always knew you'd come back, Tom. I smiled and started typing a reply. But then an email arrived from Phoebe. My finger hovered over the delete button, but curiosity got the better of me. Ivy, I underestimated you. A mistake I won't repeat. This company is too small for the two of us. I'm not just going to sell what you create. Enjoy your victory while you can. F. I reread the email twice and calmly hit delete. Her threats meant nothing anymore. The system she claimed to be the author of had itself shown its inadequacy. It destroyed itself not because I did anything, but because it took someone else's work without understanding its essence. I didn't need loud conflicts or cunning plans. The truth itself put everything in its places. This was my revenge, not to destroy Phoebe, but to let the truth emerge. I turned off the computer, grabbed my bag, and went home. Tomorrow would be new tasks, new systems, new problems to solve. But today I could sleep peacefully. I had regained not only my job, but also my dignity. Walking past the empty desk where I had sat 2 weeks ago, I stopped. It was here that Phoebe had once told me I was nobody. I ran my hand along the tabletop and quietly whispered, "Thanks for reminding me. True value never depends on other people's words.